I'm a doggy.
So you're for sale?
No.
A prostitute?
No, I am not a prostitute. Woof, woof.
God is not here.
Do you like the sound of that? Do you want to hear my pussy?
Oh, the language on you. You blow your father with that mouth?
Oh, it's a whole subculture.
Babies?
Adult babies. I keep getting all these requests. Teething rings, bassinets. Some people even want to see me wear a diaper.
Stop it, please, I beg you!
Euphoria Season 3 is the type of aimless, empty, and degenerate garbage that makes me want to shower in holy water and yearn for the afterlife. And although this season offers nothing outside of empty shock value and mostly unlikable characters, at least it serves as a PSA against absentee fathers and subsequent thought daughters. I'm recording this after episode 5, so there's still a lot to be revealed, but we're over halfway finished with the season, and I just had to share some of my thoughts.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
Let me get the positives out of the way since there are so few. In spite of the aneurysm-inducing script, the actors are all doing a pretty solid job this season. The cinematography is pretty fantastic, and I think the soundtrack and editing are all on point. But just as many failed shows before this, all of this means jack shit if there's nothing meaningful being conveyed. For the life of me, I legitimately do not understand what this season of Euphoria is trying to say, since its thematic messaging is so muddled and unfocused. Almost every character is unlikable, and the entire story focuses on women hoeing out for financial gain in one form or another. I guess this is female empowerment in 2026.
You're a whore, and your mother was a whore, and her mother, and your father used to turn tricks at a gas station, because he was a whore too.
And to be clear, I'm not some prude. I'm all for some TNA when the time calls for it, but when it's so cringe and gratuitous that it makes me roll my eyes and want to Minecraft myself, then I question what I'm doing with my life wasting time watching this aimless slop. Like seriously, what is this show even about anymore? The absurdity of previous seasons was somewhat grounded in the confines of a high school setting, since that naturally plays into traditional soap opera elements, even when they were super over the top. But now that years have passed and unfortunately actors have passed or left the show as well, the ground is shaky for season 3 conceptually. What used to be a story about drug addiction and teenage angst is virtually unrecognizable. I'll give the creators credit for trying their best with the unfortunate real-life circumstances, but this doesn't even resemble the previous seasons whatsoever, besides doubling down on the shocking moments that are meant to trick the audience that something meaningful is taking place. You may as well have not made season 3, but it seems that Sam Levinson, the writer's room, and HBO thought that they could coast off of Zendaya's large social media following and Sydney Sweeney's even larger tits.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
Real quick, if you're enjoying the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing. Now back to the video. In the previous seasons, Rue's battle with addiction and her attempt to rekindle with her family was the emotional core of this show, but now it's a complete afterthought. She seems to have gotten her drug use mostly under control off screen.
What? What are you talking about?
Well, that's just lazy writing.
Not seeing her get sober renders this change hollow, since we don't see it ourselves besides one brief flashback. Without this, the emotional center of the narrative is completely absent, and her mom makes a return late in the season as we've seen in the trailers, but it feels like that's gonna be too little too late. This was the primary storyline many viewers were invested in, and it has been reduced to a complete afterthought.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
So Rue has been stuck working for Lori as a drug mule since she owes her so much money. Eventually, she delivers drugs to Alamo Ranch, and some of the product was accidentally spiked with fentanyl. Apparently, the gray matter from Faye's brain went right to her Kylie Jenner fish lips because she doesn't understand how cross-contamination works. Alamo Brown, who runs strip clubs as well as his own drug operation, takes Rue under his wing as collateral and promotes her into his crew. Then the DEA pulls her over on a drug run, busts her, and threatens her with 20 years in federal prison unless she turns rat and gets both sides to incriminate themselves.
I ain't no snitch! Prepare to be fucked by the long dick of the law.
Even though Rue's storyline is the most interesting and she's easy to empathize with since her entire shitty life is a product of one bad decision, it just doesn't hit the way it should since she's not the driving force in her own story anymore. While it was her decision to get in bed with Lori initially, that was last season. This season she has no agency whatsoever, and while it kind of makes sense since it's a metaphor for her being trapped in this situation, she's ultimately driven by the world around her. She's a pawn in someone else's game. Her life is one of happenstance now rather than her own actions, and a protagonist whose story is primarily determined by outside factors is not a great formula for meaningful character development nor enthralling television. Not to mention, she hasn't really changed much since high school. She's still mopey, pining over Jules, and generally attracted to the shady lifestyle that got her fucked in the first place. So, has she really learned much from her mistakes? That's pretty unclear still.
Don't count on it. Aww.
Besides Rue, Lexi is pretty much the only other likable character since she busts her ass every day to succeed in her Hollywood job. And although she's pretty uptight, her work ethic and moral compass are paragons of virtue in this otherwise debaucherous narrative. And I also liked her because she finds Cassie, Maddie, and pretty much the rest of the cast just as deplorable as myself.
What is wrong with you people? You're looking for drugs, you're selling your body on your porn site, and you're like some internet pimp? It's sad, and it's pathetic, and it's really disturbing, honestly.
You disgust me.
Cassie is a narcissistic, insane e-thought whose desire for attention is sickening. Maddie is a pimp and a master manipulator whose characterization is paper thin. Jules is a wannabe classy hooker who is too lazy to complete art school. Nate is still a douchebag, but he's now a pathetic cuck who forgot how to stand up for himself. Alamo and his crew are sex trafficking drug dealers, and Lori and her crew are white supremacist drug dealers. So who or what exactly am I supposed to latch onto here?
A good question. For another time.
Don't get me wrong, I'm fine watching shitty people if they're interesting, well-written, and have good character development. That's the basis of many great shows like Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, The Sopranos, and others. But those shows are leaps and bounds above Euphoria Season 3, which has nothing to offer outside of whorish shock value, a nihilistic worldview, and deplorable characters. Speaking of which, Cassie's characterization is downright baffling. She's a revolting narcissist, but also gains everything she wants by throwing box online and throwing all of her morals to the wayside. So, is she supposed to be a favorable example of female empowerment, or does she serve as a cautionary tale? Is the show encouraging her behavior or not? Because depending on the scene, it's super unclear. And before I hear in the comments, well, the show's not over yet, they're clearly going to address these things. Guys, we are now 5 episodes into a 8-episode season. The audience should be able to tell what the fuck Cassie's arc is supposed to mean. Not everything needs to be answered, but we should have some indication beyond titties, titties, ass, titties, box, titties, ass.
I'm beginning to see a pattern here that I'm not so sure if I like.
Another aspect I questioned was she goes on podcasts to parrot conservative talking points like today's men need to be masculine again and women should cook and clean as the show attempts to portray her as a bad person, as if this is some absolute moral failing compared to the miles worth of sex toys she has used to prostitute herself online. And this is something activist writers do for shows like The Boys. They get an awful character to say something they don't agree with politically or socially and are like, see, if you think like this, you're a bad person, just like Cassie. But the problem with this, besides the fact it instantly dates a piece of media, is that just because a shitty character makes a point doesn't mean that point is automatically wrong. Furthermore, it makes the writing team look desperate and frankly untalented. As much as I don't like Cassie, it's true that women don't like weak, unmasculine men. If they did, then Nate wouldn't have been the most popular guy in high school despite being a total piece of shit. And God forbid even a single woman in America have to cook or clean. Society is clearly against them. It's not like a woman can just take off her underwear and make millions rubbing roast beef on the web. Oh wait, that's what this whole season has been highlighting.
How embarrassing.
How embarrassing.
I'm not trying to make this political like this show clearly tried to, but the messaging is very confusing if Cassie is supposed to be some MAGA stand-in when she's fully embracing the liberal apex of female empowerment. I assume this is taking a shot at conservative men who are manipulated by OnlyFans girls who tell them what they want to hear, but how can I tell when the writing has been so inconsistent in this season? And even though Cassie is clearly a repulsive person, it's confusing whether the writers are demonizing her or her Jezebel antics.
The world may never know.
Her character feels like a complete contradiction and a call to action for gooners to seek God.
Stop it. Get some help.
From the trailers, it looks like she ends up facing some major consequences for her actions, but regardless, the road to get there has not been constructed well enough for me to not feel like my time is being wasted. I'm so glad we booted Rue as the main character to make room for the Cassie Booby subathon instead. And what's up with her crushing a person of color in that dream sequence? Seems a little much and doesn't feel very inclusive to me, Sam Levinson. Maddie's A Pimp Named Slickback arc is frustrating for a different reason. It's completely one-dimensional. I want to get rich. Okay, great. I want to shit $1 million every morning too, Maddie, but what about that is interesting to watch?
Hello, I like money.
Tony Montana wanted riches because it led to power, women, and respect. What does Maddie want to do with her money? Make more money? Okay, cool. That doesn't make for good TV. Also, in what world are her and Rue friends after high school? They were acquaintances at best, and from what I remember, they didn't care for one another very much anyways. Jules is the poster child of a spoiled person who can't get out of their own ass. Why would this show portray a trans person as someone who would willingly throw away a huge career opportunity because somehow a vulgar painting goes hand in hand with their identity and thus they refuse to alter it? Is Sam Levinson trying to tell us something here?
What do you mean by that?
Also, how the hell does Jules not realize there's sponsors and censors you have to keep happy on network television? I don't remember an episode of Seinfeld where a giant painting of frogs doing the poop shoot salute was hanging in the background of Jerry's apartment, do you?
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
And the line, "Oh, she's trans, we're gonna have to tackle this delicately," doesn't really reinforce the best stereotypes for that demographic, now does it? But hey, why does Jules even need to care? She doesn't need art or a career for that matter. As long as she can get her married sugar daddy to keep paying for her lifestyle, she will always be shielded from the unforgiving consequences of the real world. Remember everyone, you too can whore yourself out and contribute nothing positive to society, just like Jules and Cassie. If that's not the American dream, I don't know what is.
America! Fuck yeah!
As for Nate, where did his balls go? The writers clearly got off humiliating him this season, and I hated this guy, but now I almost feel bad because of how pathetic he's become. And to add insult to injury, they made him just as stupid as he is weak. Nate blackmailed Jules, Tyler, and even Maddie in previous seasons, and he used his dad's blicky as a threat. He just had a thug break into his house and lost a pinky toe. Did he just forget that weapons exist? That he could just leave and hide somewhere else? What happened to his quick wit and knack for scheming his way out of these types of situations?
I don't know.
And despite the fact his entire life is on the line, he's just sitting around with no plan to get money. He's just waiting for sugar mommy Cassie and sits home all day.
Oh God, I'm pathetic.
If I owed a shady thug $1 million, I would be doing anything I could to prevent the loss of any of my remaining 18 digits. As the philosopher Young Thug said, "If thou runneth up my digits, we must runneth up the money." And this characterization doesn't align with previous seasons. This is a clunky character assassination that's hard to watch, which is ironic because, in theory, I would love to see Nate get his comeuppance for being a royal prick this entire show, but I can't even enjoy this because of how nonsensical and stupid it is.
You are a sad, strange little man, and you have my pity.
After episode 1, it felt like we were moving somewhere swiftly this season, with a purpose, but it's become clear that the various plot threads and character arcs are just spinning their tires, pretending to put in work when they're really just going through the motions. And while the last 3 episodes could really tie things together, this season thus far has similar problems that Stranger Things Season 5 had. If you want to hear more about my thoughts on that monstrosity, I have a video ripping it a new one. Both seasons wasted a lot of valuable time, and the writers likely won't be able to wrap up everything in a satisfying manner before the final buzzer sounds. Also, I didn't even talk about Rue's potential death cliffhanger because we see she's alive in a scene that hasn't happened yet. So if you want to manufacture suspense, HBO, maybe don't spoil major plot points in your own marketing materials. There is still so much to be addressed in the final 3 episodes. Is Rue gonna come out unscathed? Will Maddie join forces with Alamo or just get herself and Cassie killed? Can Nate grow his nuts back and fend for himself? Will Jules lift a finger to contribute anything to this story besides erotic paintings and resting bitch face? Where the hell is Ali, and why is he largely absent so far? What's gonna happen with the DEA, Alamo's operation, and the conflict with Lori? Quite frankly, I don't give a shit.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
Let me tell you something.
We don't care.
Euphoria Season 3 is a caricature of what this series used to be, and that's saying a lot because it wasn't some masterpiece to begin with, but it was entertaining, the character writing was interesting, and Rue and Fez, rest in peace, were fleshed out and easy to root for in spite of their flaws. But now, Euphoria has completely shedded its emotional center and detailed character arcs in favor of cheap heat and boring over-sexualization. Whatever sauce this show used to have has been lost, or perhaps, as Professor Gucci Mane once hypothesized, Sam Levinson has become lost in the sauce itself, and that is a fate no mere mortal returns from.
When I ain't had no money, I still had sauce. So if you don't got no sauce, then you're lost. But you can also get lost in the sauce.
You can get how you get lost in the sauce?
Man, a bitch gonna get lost in the sauce, man.
Thank you so much for sticking with the video this long. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. And let me hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you enjoyed this season thus far, or are you in the same boat as me and you're pretty disappointed? How do you think this season's gonna wrap up, and what do you think the fate of all the characters are gonna be? Unlike this season of Euphoria, I hope that this video didn't waste your time and that you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all in the next one.